Welcome back, everyone. I want to talk about Final Cut Pro for the iPad. Well, for the iPad Pro, to be exact. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Many years ago, as I've intimated on this channel, I did a trip to the US and I took my previous iPad Pro with me, and I wanted to edit videos along the way, and the only program at that time was LumaFusion. Now, LumaFusion has come a long way since then, but back then it was a bit clunky and it wasn't the easiest thing to do. Now, all of a sudden, here it is in May of 2023, and Apple have finally released Final Cut Pro for the iPad. Am I happy with it? Yes, I think they've done a brilliant job. I really do. I also understand that because it's the iPad, even though the core of the Final Cut Pro experience is there are certain aspects of how you drill down and get different operations are different. And it makes sense because the iPad is a touch device, unlike the iMac desktop, and I've got Final Cut Pro open here. This uses the keyboard, the mouse, so forth. But saying that, it really astounds me what they've done with this. And there are some areas that are lacking, certain omissions, which I think will come in later versions. But the core of usability, as far as I'm concerned, for the type of editing I do, it's there. Look, I'm a Final Cut Pro nerd. I love it. I really do. Over the years, I've used so many different types of editors, and once I discovered Final Cut Pro, even though it took me a change of mindset, once I got it, my God, I would never go. I would not touch another program. Look, I like DaVinci Resolve. I do use it from time to time, but it's like most to me, the core of an editor is that you are trying to tell a story. You're trying to tell it quickly and succinctly, and you want the editing program to get out of the way of telling the story. And to me, that's where Final Cut Pro is king. The difference between LumaFusion and Final Cut Pro, okay, I'll say this. I think the current version of LumaFusion is really, really good, especially now with the multicam editing. That's been a long time coming, but it's finally here, and they've done it well. There are a couple of little areas in respect to audio management in LumaFusion that are still wanting, which Final Cut Pro have solved. Saying that, I think LumaFusion will still have a marketplace, because the one thing about this version of Final Cut Pro is that it will only work on the M1 and M2 iPads, and as a result, anything under that, your iPad Airs and further down the stream, LumaFusion has it all to themselves. Final Cut Pro on the iPad, I think, is awesome and can only get better. So I think it's time to now show you around. Here we go. So here's the iPad Pro, and if you look down closely, there's the little there's the icon for Final Cut Pro. Looks familiar. So let's open that. Now, if you look over here, so what you're confronted with is this particular screen, and it basically projects. And I've already got 3 test ones here. You've already seen some of these. They're not the full projects. They're just bits and pieces, files. I just thought I'd bring them in and try them out. So here we go. We'll do this one. So you push the edit button. So this edit button here, we push that, and now we've got an interface. And that interface is very familiar, but being the iPad, it is also very there are certain things that have been repositioned and you've got to drill down to get to other areas, but the functionality is still the same. On the left here we have the view screen. Over here is where the project media is held, and down here is the timeline, again like standard Final Cut Pro. Over here on the bottom section we have the inspector button. So once you've got the inspection button open and you select your media, on the left tells you the file name, file size, blah blah blah, camera. You'll be interested to note that there's a thing here called color space override. If you turn that on and off, if, say for instance, in my case, not today, but sometimes I record and log, if that was a log file, if I go here, come down to Rec 709, bang, and because it's a log file, it will also have the Canon log settings, and I'd set that appropriately. I mean, that's great, the fact that you've even got that. Okay, so let's go back to the bottom here. We have the volume button. Using your finger, if there was a file here, there's nothing there at the moment on the timeline, you can adjust the volume up and down. You've got the animate button and the multicam button. The multicam functionality within Final Cut Pro is identical to that of the desktop. So we'll close those. Up the top here we have, this is our import button, and that's how we bring the media into the project area. This one here is a button that we can actually record. We use the camera in the iPad to record something and then have it come straight into the iPad. The next button, I love this, and I'll show you a little bit later that this is a new animate. So you can draw using the pencil or your finger, draw on the screen different pieces of graphic and then have it animated straight onto the screen. It's amazing. And last but not least, we have the export button. And look, I know some people are complaining that there's not a lot of options, but look, it is an iPad. As far as I'm concerned, it gives me the ability to do H.624. It gives me ProRes, and I think there might be one or two others. They're the only two ones I ever work with, so I'm happy with that. That's fine. Oh, actually, I just realized something. That export button gives you the ability to export the whole project all wrapped up in a little folder, so you can then copy it over to your iMac and open it up as a full-blown Final Cut Pro project. Now, some people are complaining about the fact that it can't come the other way. Okay, fair enough, but personally I don't need that. I wouldn't want it. To me, I would be starting projects on this and then later finishing them on here. Or if they're small projects, I'd be starting them and finishing them on here, and then I would export the whole project for archive purposes. So I'm happy with that. And that leads me to another thing that some people are unhappy about. The fact that you can't run from an external drive. Okay, now I've got two minds on this. And I get this if you've only got an iPad Pro with 128 gig of RAM, but I'll be honest with you, why the hell would you buy an iPad Pro with such a small amount of RAM? It's the same reason why I spent good money with my new MacBook Pro. It's 4 terabytes of onboard blazingly fast hard drive space. It's the same principle with this. I wanted an iPad that had onboard memory, lots of. I would have liked to have afforded the 2 terabyte, but I can only afford the 1, but that doesn't matter. It gives me plenty to work with. And so, to me, I like the idea of just being able to ingest the files into a very fast hard drive, internal space, no limitations on editing, do my editing, then output it for future archiving, or if I want to, work on it later on the iMac. So, to me, it's a non-issue. I'm happy with the setup the way it is. One of the small areas that I'm a little bit disappointed in, because I've got the keyboard for the iPad Pro, some of the keyboard shortcuts that I use on the desktop are missing, but at least the core ones are still there, and I have a suspicion that the others will come. So for instance, in this instance, I'm going to bring that whole file onto the timeline. If I push E, hey presto, it's there. It's on the timeline. Okay. Now, by the way, if when you're watching this, the color looks a bit odd, I tend to shoot. I'm using this was the GoPro 10, and I tend to shoot in the natural color, and I then alter that in post. To me, one of the most exciting parts about this, all other editing programs that I've tried on the iPad always fail in one area, and that's audio. Even DaVinci Resolve, and I dare say that they will get there eventually. And what I mean by audio, I mean everyone concentrates on how good you can, how easy it is to manipulate video, but when, let's say for instance, I do this a lot. So you interviewing someone, you put a mic on yourself and a mic on someone else, or you're interviewing two people and you have two separate mics. It means you've got two channels of sound. The downside with most of these other programs is that they make it bloody hard to separate those two tracks. Generally speaking, they keep them as a stereo file or a stereo track, and I'm going to show you this. This is great. There's Glenn speaking and me speaking. Now I'm going to show you this. This is incredible. I love this. I really do. So we turn the inspector back on. We come to here, and we come up in the inspector. Once you have files on the timeline, it opens in the inspector. You get new attributes, and here we go. Up here we've got camera, but then you've got your audio. Now, and this is what I'm getting at, and this is where some things are buried. But if you look over here, this little round circle with the three dots, if you click on that, audio options. Now, if you look here, at the moment they're stereo, but if I go dual mono, okay, and if I then go expand all audio components, look what's happened. I now have two independent channels. So here we go. Now Glenn's going to talk. Yeah.
Believe me, it's great. It works really well. Yeah. And it's
yeah, and then
it saved my bacon a few times.
So there we go. I'm not saying this is how you should do it, but this is how I love to edit, and I do. This is identical to on the actual desktop. You just come down here and just push blade. Okay, that's fine. Now we'll go along. Let's have a listen.
It saved my bacon a few times.
Okay. And we'll put another one there. Right. Now, I love this. I can. So, where's Glenn talking?
Believe me, it's great. It works really well.
That's me talking. So, in essence, I can now. I'm just suddenly learning what I'm doing with this. Oh, here we go. I just realised something. Okay. Again, a small difference between the desktop and this. On the desktop, I can just deactivate that particular track. I can activate or deactivate it by a menu selection. You can't do that. But what you can do, in this instance, I go to the volume button, and that's selected, and just drag that down, and now that's no longer, you can't hear that. Okay? But vice versa, and then if you listen, you can hear me.
Believe me, it's great. It works really well, and it's it saved my bacon a few times.
Now, so in this instance, that if I come back to this track and do the same thing, we can literally. So now.
It works really well, and it's it saved my bacon a few times.
And as you can see now, we go back to the track, and I tend to do this. I alternate backwards and forwards along the timeline, and to me it gives me a very clean audio feed for both channels. And then if you get a situation where sometimes you get two people when they're talking, someone might start to talk while another one's just finishing. Well, you can literally, in a case like this, and we can drag that across, as you can see, and what has happened is that's expanded over the top of. Okay, see what's happened there? Right? And literally you can put a fade in there and away you go. Oh, now that reminds me, I want to show you something else which to do with audio, which is very important as far as I'm concerned. That's keyframing. I like the control of keyframing, and in this you can do it easily. Watch. So you're on the track, you go to volume, and you can put a keyframe, just like on the the top there, and put another keyframe. And let's say, for instance, we want to hollow out that section there. Put another keyframe, move it along, and again another keyframe, and then holding that in the middle, you notice that the little line between the dots become yellow. If you go to the volume button, I can literally drag that down, and as you can see, I can duck the audio. So if you look up here, we have a little button, and we click that, this appears down here. Now, if you use your thumb to click on here, if you notice, you can move your playhead along. It's incredible. But this is the part that I love. We select the range tool. So we just select one keyframe, and now I select keyframe here. I can make that longer or shorter, depending on what I want to do. So the fact that I can bring in a dual channel recording that's in stereo, then split it to have separate tracks, and then be able to keyframe each track is phenomenal. And on the iPad, I mean, that is the functionality that I use on the desktop, and that makes my day. To me, that was the number one missing ingredient on virtually all editing software for the iPad. So there you go. So as far as I'm concerned, that is a big deal. While we're on the subject of keyframes, you can animate just like with the desktop very easily. So let me show you. So as you can see, there's where I've been mucking around with the duck line, and if you touch the line, the timeline, and collapse audio components, that reduces them down because we don't want to see them anymore for the moment. Now I better go into the inspector. We'll turn this off, and we'll turn that off. And as I said, in the inspector, when you're on the timeline, you have these four items across here. You have camera, or file, we have animation or movement, we have audio, and over here we have effects. What I'm interested in is this animation. So let's say, for instance, I want to put this circle. Let's grab this. Actually, I'll use my finger. We'll grab that, and we just drop it onto the timeline. It's ready to animate, do whatever I want. So let's just resize it a bit, and we'll bring it down here. This is something which actually this has caused me a little bit of grief when I first started doing this, and it took me a little while to work out. This is a bit of an oddity. So let me show you. When you start a new animation on the timeline, and you put it there, before you start to animate, go down here and check. As I said, it will say opacity, and that's not what you want. You go up to all, and that now gives you the ability to scale and do whatever you want. So if we push animate, move the timeline, then move this, and then rescale it accordingly. As you can see, when we get to the relevant point, that actually starts to animate. Just like with the desktop version, you can animate parts. Earlier I was talking about the fact that I've with the GoPro footage, I tend to shoot with natural color. Now, I'm going to show you how you can set that, change that, to colorize it basically on the timeline here. So let's go back to this original file here. We'll turn animate off and we'll go back to here. Okay. So if we go to effects and you push the little plus button here, you push color adjust, we now get a color adjustment. Okay. Now, some people are not going to be happy with this. They like their color wheels and so forth. I don't mind sliders. So again, for my type of editing, I'm happy with this. This is not a log file. This is a GoPro file. If we actually turn that off, we make the screen bigger. And now let's just say that's, let me see. Yep. And if I want to make it just a little bit brighter, yeah, might push the contrast a bit, give it a bit more pop, and then we can adjust the let's say the shadow warmth. Yeah, and then you've got the ability to mix if you want the different changes. You can see the changes that are happening. Let's say I'm happy with that for the moment. We'll just leave it at that. Turn the inspector off, and hey presto. Now, here's one of the things which I think they've left out. So you can actually copy those settings. So if we go back to inspector, okay, go back to color adjustment here, and we go plus, sorry, the small circle with the 3 dots, copy effects. I can then move the timeline over to here, paste effects, and there we go. But I have to do it section by section. I can't reduce the thing and then select multiple. I lose the ability to do a paste over multiple selections. I'm hoping they will fix that sometime in the future. So there is another thing which frustrates me, and that is when I do not necessarily GoPro footage, but when I do log footage, I like to sharpen it. I mean, it's just flat, and I like to sharpen to the footage to suit what I want. Unfortunately, unless I'm missing something, I cannot find the sharpening effect anywhere within this program. So I'm hoping that's something that they've forgotten about, that they will put in at some time in the future. Or if someone knows where the hell to find it, please let me know. But I've looked everywhere. Like the things that I think are missing: sharpening, keyboard shortcuts, multiple selections. That's about it. Other than that, if they fix those things up, I'd be really happy. And over time, like with the desktop version, I will get quite proactive at it. And you can have multiple, here we go. We can have multiple projects. You can, by the way, copy and paste between the projects. I've already tried that. Oh yes, one last thing, the animation. Remember I was talking about this tool up here? Well look, I did this, so on this particular thing, I actually, where the red line's going across there, I've animated that. So let's just add another animation there, using the pencil. So we click that, we grab the pencil, and now let's say, and you got multiple, let's just make that colour there, and I'm going to, I don't know, just for the hell of it. Okay, I've just circled that. Okay, and let's do multiple colours, and we'll do multiple. And by the way, if you hold on to the, what's the name, you can make them bigger or smaller. So let's make them really big, and we'll make that one a red. I'll make it a green. Look at that. So I've finished doing my drawing. Now you watch what happens. So we go done. pen back up there. Look at that. Isn't that neat? I love that. That is so incredible. What do you think of that? That's just unbelievable. Now, what happens if I export this as a project and bring it into the timeline here, it maintains those animations. You can't alter them, but they're still there. Look, I might do some further. This was more of what I thought of it. It's not a tutorial or a how-to or whatever. It's just my first impressions, and my first impressions are, I love it. It will be my de facto editing program on the iPad from now on. So until next time, thanks for watching.